And Lamar Waldron is still on the line with us, the author of Watergate, The Hidden History, Nixon, the Mafia, and the CIA, as well as numerous other books, including Ultimate Sacrifice and Legacy of Secrecy, where I share some small co-author credit. Lamar, welcome back.
Great to be with you again, Tom.
You had some thoughts on the weaponry that was used in Orlando and that genre of weaponry that has been used in so many other mass killings in the United States, and just this whole zeitgeist around this. Can you want to riff on that for a bit?
And what most of your listeners don't realize, I find most progressives don't realize this, the mainstream media, I believe, has yet to really talk about it, and conservative media doesn't talk about it except, to themselves, because they don't want the secret to get out. But the problem with assault weapons, like the 6 Hour that was used, and assault weapons, and they're basically an AR-15, but an AR-15 is a type of gun, and there's a lot of different manufacturers. The one in Orlando was by 6 Hour, I believe, was the
German company.
Right. And by the way, Donald Trump, went to the 6 Hour factory.
His sons are photographed holding the very gun that this guy shot up Orlando with.
Right, the exact same model. That was earlier this year. Two of the sons were there, one's holding the gun. They're there with their wives and smiling. That photo doesn't get a lot of play in mainstream media. But here's the most important thing. Because the NRA uses fibs, fear, ignorance, bigotry, and smear, just like Nixon and Trump, this is kind of a secret right now. And so a lot of your listeners are hearing this for the first time. And just so your listeners know, because I grew up in the South, so I know, guns, a semi-automatic rifle, assault rifle, like these AR-15s, like the 6 Hour used in Orlando, are a single shot. You pull the trigger once, one shot goes out. In movies we've all seen, in war movies or old gangster movies, Tommy guns, machine guns, those are fully automatic weapons. The one, the pull the trigger once, one bullet comes out, that's a semi-automatic. Okay, so that's what the assault, So
they basically fire as fast as you can pull the trigger.
Right. Okay, and in fact, we know exactly how fast that was, because this poor woman, Amanda Avalier, who died, was recording a Snapchat video at the time the shooting started, and you hear the killer get off 17 shots in 7 seconds. Okay. And so, but
now, that's not possible if you're pulling a trigger.
Well, he's able to do that. It's like, and you hear that. You hear the actual start on this video. You can see this video online if you look up, the video of the actual shooting. But what most of your listeners don't know is that for $99, the killings in Orlando and in Aurora, Colorado, and in Newtown could have been far, far worse. There is a $99 device, legal at this moment, that can let any AR-15, let the Orlando shooter's AR-15 fire almost as fast as the machine guns that you have seen on TV. So, and we're talking 100 shots, according to the YouTube video, and there are a lot of YouTube videos of this, in 7 seconds. Imagine, so instead of 17 shots in 7 seconds, imagine 100 shots in 7 seconds. Imagine how many people would have died in Orlando, how many would have died at Aurora, Colorado with that AR-15, how many would have died in Newtown. And this is a currently legal device. So in other words, when you hear people talk about the assault weapons ban, most of them don't realize that you can turn for $99. You can get something called it's a bump fire device. It's really a machine gun device. Bump Fire Systems at bumpfiresystems.com. They're proud of their videos. They'll show you videos where for $99, you put it on any AR-15, and it basically turns it into something that emulates a machine gun. So instead of you're going, the sounds we used to make when we were kids and we played machine guns. That's what any assault rifle can become.
So is this a device that basically uses the recoil to recock the gun?
Exactly. It's actually a certain kind of stock, and you put it in, and it's the recoil of the gun. Because, you know, I've shot a machine gun before, and they do recoil, and that uses.
In fact, I think you and I did it together when I lived in Atlanta. Didn't we go? Didn't you come with me?
That was 30 years ago, and we didn't use an assault weapon. You know, we actually went to a licensed.
Right, we were using Uzis and Thompsons, and
they had you know, the license.
And we had my kids with us.
and that's right. But here's the important thing. You know, machine guns have always basically been illegal for the general public to own unless they had these special licenses.
Right.
Because people knew you can't give a kid, I believe Justin shot the .22 caliber machine gun when I was 9. One of my uncles let me shoot his machine gun, and I got to tell you, you know, it kicked me back, and all the adults around hit the ground, because you shouldn't do it. You know, a machine gun is not a rifle. And an assault rifle, thanks to this $99 device that most of your gun people know all about, they just don't talk about it, any assault rifle can basically become a machine gun. Here's what your listeners need to do, though. And, you know, because just imagine, you know, if you've got that machine gun device on your AR-15, it doesn't matter if a nightclub's got 5 or 10 guards, you're going to mow them down. You know, security guards don't have machine guns to come back against you. So this is an alcohol, tobacco, and firearms approval. In other words, you know, bump fire systems, they developed this. There are other similar types of systems. You know, they got the approval for it several years ago from the ATF. Someone at the ATF, some probably technician looking at a narrow definition of what a machine gun is, basically said, oh, okay, yeah, turn all the assault rifles into machine guns. That's fine. Here's a letter saying that's legal. I'm sure the bump fire.
And then 6 weeks later, he finds himself with a job at one of the gun manufacturers.
Well, we don't know that, but and I want to say
that's how it typically works here.
I'm sure Bump Fire Systems is perfectly a bunch of nice people. What they're doing is perfectly legal. But today, President Obama, if he hears from enough of your listeners, and if your listeners tell their friends and family, President Obama, who is over the ATF, can say, look, I don't think this approval was applied correctly. Let's suspend it effective immediately. It does not take congressional action, and we can keep all of these assault rifles from becoming machine guns. I mean, if that Orlando shooter had been willing to wait a week for that bump fire device, that machine gun device to arrive, I mean, I can't imagine how many more people would have been killed when he's spraying 100 shots in 7 seconds. So all of your listeners need to contact all of their members of Congress and the White House and say, take this AR-15 machine gun device off the market. You know, and we need to get the assault weapons ban back, because any assault weapon can now become a machine gun for $99. And these are considered rifles. Assault rifles are considered rifles. I mean, a lot of places, there's not even a really good age limit, you know, and kids, we don't need gangs of kids with machine guns. And we've known that for years. That's why you and I had to go to the special range with the place that had the license, you know, because people know machine guns don't belong in the hands of criminals and the general public. But right now, every assault rifle can be a machine gun for just $99. And we need to get the White House to immediately stop that. You know, the last survey I saw said that only 54% of Americans support an assault weapons ban. But I'll bet you a lot of those people that don't support it, a lot of the moderates and the middle of the road kind of people, they don't realize, you know, that assault weapons can now be turned into a machine gun that'll spray bullets in death for $99. And we can't have that. The White House can take action today, tomorrow, whenever there is enough pressure put on them. So people need to spread that word. You know, I'm not promoting one of my books. I haven't written about this anywhere, but it's just something I feel strongly about, because when you go watch these videos at bumpfiresystems.com, you will be shocked.
Is that bump, B-U-M-P fire?
Right. BUMPFIRE systems.com. Go to their website. They're also on YouTube. You know, spread those videos around to your friends. Look at that video from that poor victim who died, Amanda Alvear, that Snapchat video that her brother posted to Facebook, and you'll hear, you know, how a current assault rifle goes. And then when you see what that $99 turns it into, you'll want to do everything you can to get this stopped.
That's amazing. And if people want to communicate with President Obama, the White House comment line is 202-456-1111.
Call them today, call them tomorrow, have your friends call, send them emails, do whatever you can, because the senator from Connecticut that did the filibuster.
Right.
I believe it's Murphy. Is that his name?
Yeah, Chris Murphy.
Yeah, he said when he was confronted on one of the morning talk shows when they were using the NRA talking points, he said, look, the goal is not just to try to address the narrow thing with the last one. The goal is to prevent the next mass shooting. And we don't want the next mass shooting to be done with a gun that can spray 100 shots in 7 seconds. We can't have that in America, and so let's prevent it. It's White House action. Congress doesn't need to do it. Congress should do the assault weapons ban, renew that. As we now know, thanks to the Supreme Court, states can ban assault weapons because a couple have. We need to have more states do that.
Yeah, it's a great start. Lamar Waldron, the book, Watergate, The Hidden History, Nixon, the Mafia, and the CIA, among others. Also, Legacy of Secrecy and Ultimate Sacrifice. Lamar, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Great talking.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.